She found a hidden village on an abandoned island that no map dared to name. Locals said it was cursed, left to rot after something unspeakable happened decades ago. But when Eliza stepped inside the village, what she saw shocked everyone. Homes still intact, meals half-eaten, a name carved into the wall her own. What began as a solo expedition turned into a haunting discovery buried deep within her past. Subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from. Let's get started. No one in Eliza's life truly understood why she came here. Not after what happened to her brother. Not after the years of silence that followed. But sometimes, healing doesn't come from staying safe. It comes from stepping into the unknown. Eliza wasn't a thrill seeker. She wasn't chasing ghosts or views or viral fame. She was chasing something quieter. Something that had been calling to her in dreams an island whispered about in forgotten journals and fragmented maps. An island that once held life. And then, suddenly, didn't. The boat rocked gently beneath her as the outline of the island emerged through a sheet of low-hanging fog. It looked almost peaceful, but the stories they told of an entire village that vanished. No explanation, no rescue, just gone. As she stepped onto the island's soft, root-covered earth, she could feel it, the stillness. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. Camera in hand, heart pounding. Eliza took her first steps beyond the shore. Every creak of the branches above felt like a breath. Every gust of wind, a whisper. She didn't come here to find monsters. She came here to find truth. And the island. It was ready to speak. The deeper Eliza walked into the island's interior, the more it felt like the trees were listening. The dense canopy above muffled every sound. Even her footsteps were swallowed by the moss-covered earth, leaving no echo behind. Time had wrapped itself around this place like a vine, tugging, twisting, hiding. Then she saw it. At first, it was just a glimpse. The sharp edge of something man-made breaking through the wild, barely visible beneath decades of overgrowth. Eliza paused, heart pounding. She pushed aside a thick curtain of vines, and suddenly, there it was. A roof, a rotting wooden frame, a wall still standing. Barely. She'd found it, the village. But this wasn't just a cluster of ruins. As she moved through the overgrown paths, she realized this was once a community. Small homes, arranged in a circle, a communal fire pit now filled with leaves and ash. A rusted swing set creaked in the wind. One of its chains snapped, dangling like a forgotten melody. And then, something even more chilling. A dining table, still set. Plates and cups frozen in place. As if dinner had been interrupted and no one ever came back. Eliza raised her camera slowly. Her fingers trembled. "What happened here?" she whispered. She moved methodically, her every step careful. Inside one home, she found a faded photograph on the floor, water-damaged, but still intact. A family. Smiling. A mother. A child holding a small dog, and a man in uniform. Another house held a collection of books scattered across the floor, their pages warped and curling. A child's crayon drawing hung crookedly on a wall, showing stick figures and a sun that now looked faded and ghostly. It wasn't just abandoned, it was left, in a hurry. She came across what looked like an old storehouse. Its door was off its hinges, and Eliza hesitated before stepping inside. The air was heavier here, the kind that sticks to your skin. Stacked crates lined the walls, some labeled, others not. She brushed off one lid and revealed dozens of empty vials and strange-looking tools, surgical, maybe scientific. And journals? She grabbed the top one. It was damp, but she could still make out the handwriting. Awesome. Patients growing restless. Symptoms increasing. Management says we mustn't let them leave. But how can we stop them if the boats are gone? Eliza stopped breathing for a moment. Patients, symptoms management. This wasn't just a village. It was something else. Maybe a research outpost, a quarantine zone, something official, something dark. The more she pieced together, the more questions unraveled. Why were there no bodies? Why was everything left exactly as it was, a spoon halfway to someone's mouth, a jacket still draped over a chair, a notebook open mid-sentence? She exited the storehouse, breath shaking, and made her way toward what looked like a larger structure, perhaps a town hall or a clinic. It stood at the village's center, surrounded by the skeletons of trees. Above the entrance, barely clinging to the wood, was a worn sign, Project Haven, authorized personnel only. Her pulse quickened. Inside, it was darker. The windows had been boarded from the inside. She clicked on her flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing rusted metal beds, cabinets filled with files, and a whiteboard covered in faded writing. Stage 3. Behavioral irregularities. Do not engage without backup. Containment breach. Lockdown initiated 6/12. The dates were almost 3 decades old. And then came the sound. Not wind, not water, a shuffle, a step. Inside the building, Eliza froze. Her breath caught in her throat, and her hand flew to her chest to steady her breathing. The camera's red light blinked silently as she turned toward the noise. Nothing. She held her flashlight like a weapon, slowly walking down the hallway. There were rooms on either side, all empty, except one, a door slightly ajar. Scrape marks on the floor, as if it had been slammed shut 1,000 times. She nudged it open with the toe of her boot. Inside was a single bed, buckled and rusted, the walls covered in writing, dozens of messages, etched in what looked like charcoal or something darker. We should have left when we had the chance. They knew. They all knew. The island doesn't let you go. Eliza stepped back, stomach twisting. This wasn't a village that faded into time. It was a place where something happened, and someone had tried to warn whoever found it next. She stepped outside into the light, blinking rapidly. The weight of the discovery sat heavy on her shoulders. She turned the camera toward herself, her voice shaking. I think this place was more than just a forgotten village. I think it was an experiment, and something went wrong. Terribly wrong. I don't know what I'm going to find next, but I have to keep going. She lowered the camera. Far in the distance, beyond the tree line, she saw it. A narrow path, half swallowed by foliage, leading toward the cliffs, toward what looked like another structure. Not a cabin, not a house, a bunker. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. Every step toward it felt heavier than the last, as if the island itself were begging her to turn around. But Eliza didn't come this far to leave with questions. She came for the truth. And the island was just beginning to speak. The path to the bunker wasn't a path at all. It was more like a scar, barely visible beneath the creeping vines and fallen leaves. Every step Eliza took felt quieter than the last, as though the island was holding its breath. The entrance was built into the hillside, nearly indistinguishable from the land around it. A rusted metal door lay half buried under branches. The word Access Point B still faintly visible. She knelt down, brushed off the debris, and pulled. It didn't budge. She tried again. this time with both hands, digging her heels into the damp ground. With a shriek of corroded hinges and a gust of stale air, the door gave way, opening just enough for her to squeeze through. Inside, the air was thick, not with mold or rot, but something older like stillness made solid. Her flashlight flickered. Not now. The narrow staircase led downward into pitch black. Concrete walls lined with peeling paint closed in as she descended. A strange hum echoed faintly through the air. Machinery, electricity. She couldn't tell. Then, just as she reached the bottom, the lights turned on, flickering, buzzing, alive. A hallway stretched ahead, cold and sterile, lined with doors on both sides. Some open, some locked tight. Eliza raised her camera. This place, it's not abandoned. Not really. Not in the way we thought. She stepped into the first room. Medical equipment. Strange, archaic, as though it belonged to a time that never existed. A chart on the wall detailed something called Cognitive Reorientation Protocol Phase 4. Her eyes scanned the room. Something shimmered on the far side, a mirror. But as she approached, she realized it wasn't a mirror. It was glass. Observation glass. And behind it a small, sterile cell, a bed bolted to the floor, and drawings. Childlike sketches etched directly onto the walls in red, black, and something metallic. Spirals, eyes, symbols she couldn't place. And one word, repeated over and over, remember. Eliza felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She stumbled back into the hallway and entered another room, this one darker. A projector sat in the corner, still plugged into an old power strip. With trembling hands, she hit the switch. A video sputtered to life on the wall. A man in a white coat, tired, hollow-eyed. Day 192. We've lost Subject 9. No signs of external breach, containment holding. But the dreams, they're changing. They say the island is speaking to them now, and worse, some of us are starting to hear it too. He rubs his face with shaking hands. We were never meant to stay this long. The tests weren't designed for this duration. Eliza, if you see this, I'm sorry. I tried. I really did. She froze. Her name. He had said her name. Her throat tightened. She played it again. The voice. The eyes. He looked. Familiar. Too familiar. Was this her father? No. Couldn't be. He died when she was 9. He was a meteorologist, not a scientist. Wasn't he? But the resemblance, the way he spoke, the way he said her name, everything inside her twisted. She stumbled backward, knocking into a metal cabinet. A file folder tumbled to the ground, pages spilling out across the floor. She grabbed one. Subject 4A, Cognitive Displacement, Memory Imprint Protocol, Test Results. Name Eliza Norwood. Date of entry redacted. Note, subject exhibits strong empathic resonance. Possible cross-generational memory bleed. Does not remember being here. Her vision blurred. The room tilted. Was this some kind of mistake? A cruel coincidence? Or had she been here before? She ran, out of the room, back into the hallway. The hum was louder now, a deep resonance that vibrated in her chest. The walls were changing. The writing that had once been faded now pulsed faintly with light. The word remember glowing in rhythmic waves. She turned a corner and there it was, a final door, marked only with a symbol, a spiral, the same one she'd seen on the walls, in the village, in the drawings. Her hand reached out. The door swung open on its own. Inside. The room was almost empty, circular, perfect. At its center stood a chair metal, sleek, ancient. Wires dangled above it, some still sparking softly. On the wall, a monitor blinked to life. A voice spoke, calm and robotic. "Welcome back, Eliza." Her knees buckled. She dropped to the floor. "Do you remember now?" Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I don't understand. I'm not supposed to be here." "You never left?" Suddenly, flashes of memory erupted, not her own. Or maybe they were. People running. Screams. Lockdowns, her hands tied down. A voice telling her it was going to be okay. That she had to forget to survive. Had she been a test subject? A survivor? Was this journey not one of discovery, but of return? Eliza stood up slowly, her voice trembling. "I came here to find the truth." A pause, and I think I am the truth. She turned back toward the hallway. She was no longer just a visitor. She was part of the story. The island hadn't called to her. It had called her back. As she climbed back into the fading daylight, the island no longer felt like a mystery. It felt like a memory, one that refused to stay buried. And for the first time, Eliza wasn't afraid of what she might find next. She was afraid of what she might remember. Eliza sat on the crumbling steps outside the bunker, her hands buried in her hair, the ocean wind brushing against her tear-streaked face. The sun was beginning to set, casting an amber glow across the island's surface as if it, too, was exhaling after holding in decades of breath. Her camera sat beside her, still recording. The lens fogged from the humid air. She hadn't spoken since she left the underground chamber. How could she? How do you explain to yourself that the thing you were searching for was you? The world she thought she knew, her childhood, her memories, her identity had fractured, shattered quietly like glass under pressure. She had come to uncover the island's secrets, but now she realized the island had her secrets, and she had forgotten them. As night fell, Eliza lit a small fire near the edge of the forest. She replayed the footage on her camera, the clip of the man from the projection room, the one who said her name. The voice, the eyes, every time she watched it, her chest tightened. Could he really be her father? Had he survived here, or left her behind? She remembered her mother's stories, vague, broken, careful, about how Eliza had been sick once, about a hospital no one could find on a map, about dreams she used to have, waking up screaming, clawing at the walls. And now she wondered, were those dreams not dreams at all? Were they memories? As the fire crackled, she opened the journal she found in the village, the one with the entry about the patients growing restless. Inside, tucked between the pages, was a folded photograph. It showed the same family she had seen earlier in another house. But this time, there was a name scrawled on the back. Norwood Family Site B. Her last name. Her hands trembled as she turned the photo over again and again, hoping for some kind of error. But the truth was etched in ink and time. She had been here. She had lived here. But why couldn't she remember? What happened to erase all this from her mind? And more importantly, why bring her back now? The night was restless. Every creak of the trees sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind felt like someone breathing just behind her. She tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't let her. By morning, Eliza made a choice. She had to return to the village not to explore it as a stranger, but to walk it as someone who once belonged there. She stepped into each home differently now, no longer as ruins, but as rooms with meaning. Each object became a clue, not of what happened, but of who she was. In one of the houses, she found a music box, broken but still faintly chiming. A wave of nausea hit her. She remembered a melody not in sound, but in feeling. Something her mother used to hum while brushing her hair. In another, she found a small handprint painted on a wall. Next to it was a taller one, father and daughter. Eliza placed her hand over the smaller print. A perfect fit. As she wandered, she noticed more details she had missed the first time, like faint carvings in the trees surrounding the village. Symbols, names, warnings. One stood out: the mind forgets. The island remembers. A chill ran through her spine. Was the island more than just a place? Was it aware? Or maybe it simply preserved what people tried to bury, like some ancient, sentient vault of forgotten truths. She now understood why everything felt so preserved, why nothing had been taken, why it was all left in place as if the island needed someone to come back and see it, to feel it. And that someone was her. Eliza began talking to the camera again. Not for her audience, but for herself. This isn't a story about a haunted island, or a cursed one. This is a story about memory, about survival, about what we choose to forget, and what won't let go of us. She paused, her voice cracking. I think they brought me here as a child. Maybe they were testing something, a treatment, or an experiment. I don't know, but I survived it. Somehow. And they made me forget. Maybe it was mercy. Maybe it was part of the experiment. But whatever it was, it didn't last forever. Because now I remember. The final piece came when she walked into the village chapel, a small, rotted building barely standing. Inside was a cracked altar. And behind it, a mural. Not a religious one. It was scientific. Painted in vibrant colors long faded. It depicted a spiral, the same one she had seen again and again. Surrounding it were depictions of brains, circuitry, children in chairs. It was as if the villagers had known what was happening to them and had tried to document it in their own way. At the base of the mural were names, many scratched out. But one remained. Eliza N. She reached out, tracing the faded letters with her fingertips. A whisper echoed through the chapel. Or maybe it was only in her mind. You came back. She fell to her knees, the emotion too heavy to carry. Not grief, not fear. Something deeper, recognition, reclamation. The truth didn't hurt the way she thought it would. It didn't shatter her, it completed her. She hadn't come to solve a mystery. She was the mystery. And now, for the first time in her life, she didn't feel lost. She felt found. As the sun began to fall once more, Eliza stood on the same shoreline where she had first stepped foot days earlier. But she wasn't the same person. She turned to face the island one last time. Thank you, she whispered, for remembering, for holding on to her when she couldn't, for waiting. She didn't know what came next, whether she'd tell the full story or protect it. But she knew this much. She would never forget again. The boat was scheduled to return at dawn, but Eliza didn't wait near the beach. Instead, she returned to the bunker. Not out of fear, or even unfinished business, but with purpose. Something had shifted in her. Now that the veil had lifted, she couldn't just leave with fragments. She needed something tangible. Not just proof of the island's existence, but proof that she existed here. That it wasn't just trauma resurfacing, but a truth long buried in layers of silence. She descended those same stairs with steady steps. No flashlight needed this time. The lights greeted her again, humming faintly. The island, it seemed, remembered her now too. She walked past the rooms she had once feared, retracing every corner. In the archive room, she began opening cabinets she had previously ignored. Some were empty. Others were filled with tapes, old hard drives, and binders sealed in plastic. One of them was labeled in black marker Norwood Deep Imprint Case. Her breath caught. She sat on the floor, peeled it open. Inside were typed reports, brain scans, behavioral charts. One paper clipped to the front read, "Subject Eliza Norwood, cognitive memory suppression successful, emotional resonance unresolved. Recommend future recall trials only under supervision." Eliza ran her fingers across the words, her eyes scanning faster and faster. At age 7, Eliza began to show signs of cognitive feedback, remembering things before they happened. She became emotionally reactive to stimulus not present in her environment. We believe she retained residual empathy from previous tests. What were they doing to her? What kind of place was this A facility, A lab, a government project, or something more secretive and forgotten, even by those who built it? She found an envelope at the back. Inside was a single Polaroid. It showed her, sitting on the swing in the village, smiling. Not a test subject, not a broken child, just her, a version of herself that once felt safe. She clutched the photo to her chest, holding it like a lifeline. Back outside, dawn was approaching. The sky cracked open with soft pinks and silvers. The boat's motor was a distant hum in the fog. But Eliza wasn't leaving empty-handed. She had packed the binder, the Polaroid, a few recorded tapes, and the memory card from her camera. She had enough. Not just for a story, but for something greater. The question was, what would she do with it? Back home, the world hadn't changed. People still walked with their heads buried in phones. Traffic lights blinked without meaning. The news cycle spun endlessly. But Eliza had changed. The world she had uncovered refused to stay silent within her. The island, though distant, felt closer than ever. It whispered to her in dreams again, not as a warning, but as a reminder. So she began piecing it together. Not just as footage for a YouTube documentary, but as a testament, something real, something human. She interviewed her mother, carefully, asked questions that previously would have triggered pain. But this time, her mother didn't turn away. "I was told never to talk about it," she finally admitted. "They said it was for your safety, that forgetting was part of the healing." She paused. "I never believed them." Eliza nodded. "You were right." She compiled everything into a long-form project, The Island That Remembers. It wasn't clickbait. It wasn't sensational. It was personal. She included footage of the village, the bunker, the files, the mural in the chapel. And finally, she looked into the lens and said, "They erased my memories to protect me, but they also erased my truth. I share this now not to accuse, but to awaken. There may be others like me, others who feel something's missing but can't explain why. This story is for you. You are not broken. You are not imagining things. You might simply be forgotten." The video went live at midnight. She didn't expect anything. Maybe some views, maybe silence. But by morning, her inbox was full. Messages from strangers, survivors, people who had visited places they weren't supposed to remember, people with half memories of bunkers, villages, men in white coats, whispered voices in sleep. A woman in Finland wrote, "I thought I was crazy. I painted the spiral for years and never knew why." A man from Oregon, "Your story unlocked something in me. I haven't slept since, but for the first time, I feel awake." And one message simply said, "We were waiting for you. Eliza." Universities reached out. Journalists called. Most were skeptical. Some were curious. A few were afraid. But Eliza didn't care about fame or credibility. That wasn't the opportunity she sought. She wanted healing. She wanted answers. And now, she wasn't alone in that search. A month later, she returned to the island. Not with a camera crew, not with gear, but with people those who had written to her, who remembered bits and pieces of their own forgotten places. They stood silently at the shore. Then, one by one, they walked forward. Into the forest, toward the village, toward their stories. Some cried, some screamed, some just stood still, eyes closed, letting the memory seep back in. Eliza stood among them, not as their guide, but as one of them. They weren't visitors anymore. They were returning home. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "We are not what they erased. We are what survived." The island was different the second time Eliza came. Or maybe she was. The first time, it had felt like a grave quiet, heavy, suffocating. Now, the silence wasn't haunting. It was sacred. It wasn't asking her to fear it anymore. It was asking her to listen. The others were scattered across the ruins, 12 people in total, each holding fragments of memories that never made sense until now. Some explored the houses. Some walked along the cliffs. Some sat by the remains of the fire pit where the villagers once gathered. Eliza stayed near the chapel. The mural still shimmered faintly in the filtered sunlight. The colors were fading faster now, as if the island, having been seen, was finally ready to let go. She ran her hand across her own name again, Eliza N. The letters no longer frightened her. They grounded her. A man approached from behind Owen, one of the survivors who'd reached out after seeing her video. He was tall, quiet, eyes heavy with something she recognized instantly, the weight of memory. "I used to dream about this place," he said softly. "I thought it was just a nightmare, a burning village, children crying, and a voice saying, 'Don't look back.'" Eliza turned toward him. "You weren't dreaming," she said gently. "You were remembering." He looked away, his jaw trembling. "I lost 10 years of my life to hospitals. No one ever believed me. My parents said I was delusional." Eliza placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not delusional, Owen. You survived the same silence I did." For the first time, he met her eyes. "Then why us? Why did we come back?" Eliza looked around at the others, strangers drawn by the same invisible thread, by whispers that refused to die. "Maybe the island doesn't call everyone," she said. "Maybe it calls the ones who need to remember the most." That evening, they gathered around a fire near the shore. Someone had found driftwood and broken furniture from the old houses. The flames crackled against the wind, painting their faces in gold and shadow. No one spoke for a long while. Then, one by one, they began sharing what they remembered. A woman named Iris spoke first. "I remember music," she said, tears glinting in her eyes. "A lullaby, and a red door I wasn't supposed to open." Owen nodded. "I remember the lights underground. The sound they made before the power went out. It wasn't just humming, it was speaking." Eliza listened, her throat tightening. Every word felt like a puzzle piece falling into place. Finally, they all looked at her waiting. The one who started it. The one who returned first. She swallowed hard, staring into the fire. "I remember running," she began. "Someone grabbed me, a man. I think he was my father. He was shouting, 'Don't let them take you back down there.' I remember hiding under the docks. The water was red, I thought it was rust, but it wasn't." Her voice cracked. The group stayed silent, letting her words breathe. "I think they tried to save us. Maybe it wasn't all evil. Maybe it started with hope to cure something, to help people forget pain. But somewhere along the way, they forgot who we were." She paused, tears streaming freely now. I came here thinking I'd find answers, but the truth is I found people. I found myself. The night deepened. The ocean glowed faintly under the moonlight. Eliza stood and walked to the edge of the water. Her reflection trembled on the waves. For the first time, she didn't see a victim, or a survivor, or an experiment. She saw a woman reborn. She spoke softly, but every word carried power. We spent our lives trying to forget the pain, but pain is what shapes memory. Pain is proof that something mattered. And if the island remembered us when the world forgot, then maybe it's not cursed, maybe it's holy. The others joined her by the shoreline. Together, they placed objects from the village into the sea, small offerings, a torn photograph, a rusted spoon, a piece of a child's toy. Not as evidence, as closure. The tide took them slowly, gently, as if the island itself was accepting the offering, forgiving them for leaving, and thanking them for returning. Before dawn, Eliza climbed the hill that overlooked the entire island. She sat there as the first light broke the horizon, gold spilling over the trees, the ruins, and the sea. She could feel the pulse of the island beneath her, steady and alive. But she also felt something else, peace. For the first time in her life, the silence wasn't heavy. It was full. She pulled out her camera and began to speak. Voice steady and soft. I thought the island's whispers were trying to haunt me, but now I know. They were trying to guide me. The past doesn't disappear just because we bury it. It lives in walls, in soil, in us. And sometimes, when we're ready, it finds its way back not to break us, but to remind us who we were before the forgetting. She looked directly into the lens, her expression calm, resolute. This isn't the end of my story. It's the beginning of remembering all of yours. As she stood, the wind swept through her hair, carrying the faint scent of salt and wildflowers. The sound of the waves below blended with something softer, a hum, almost melodic. The island was singing, and this time, she wasn't afraid to listen. The others called out to her from the village below. It was time to go. The boat waited at the shore. Eliza took one last look back at the place that had once stolen her childhood, and now given her peace. Thank you, she whispered again. She didn't mean the island. She meant herself. The waves lapped gently against the shore as the boat pulled away, the island shrinking slowly into the morning mist. Eliza stood at the stern, her eyes fixed on the silhouette behind her, that patch of forgotten land where everything had once been taken, and everything had just been returned. She didn't cry. She had done enough of that in the bunker, in the village, in the chapel where her name had waited for her all these years. What filled her now wasn't grief, it was clarity, not sorrow, but stillness. For the first time in her life, the noise inside her had quieted. The others sat in silence on the boat, each lost in their own thoughts. Some clutched artifacts they'd brought with them. Others stared into the sky, as if seeing it for the first time. No one spoke, and yet, somehow, it felt like the most profound conversation any of them had ever had. Back on the mainland, everything looked the same. The harbor was busy, people were walking their dogs, cafes served coffee in paper cups. But Eliza walked differently. She breathed differently. She had been altered not by trauma, but by truth. She stayed quiet about the island for a while, let the moment breathe, let the memories settle, let herself settle. Some of the others had gone their separate ways. Some stayed in touch. A few disappeared again, perhaps choosing peace over public reckoning. But Eliza, she couldn't stay silent. She knew there were others out there, people feeling empty and never knowing why. People walking through life with a ghost inside them. So she did the only thing she knew how to do. She told the story. It wasn't a viral sensation. It wasn't meant to be. But it resonated. People started writing to her. Not just survivors, but seekers. People asking deeper questions about trauma, about memory, about silence, about what it means to remember something no one else believes existed. And Eliza answered them, all of them, not with explanations, but with understanding, with permission to question, to feel, to remember. She was invited to speak at a university one day, a small seminar on memory and trauma. She wasn't a scientist. She wasn't an expert. But when she stood in front of the small room, she looked out at the curious faces and smiled. "I don't have charts or data," she said. "I don't even have all the answers, but I have something just as valuable." She paused, then continued. "I have my story, and I have my voice back." Later that evening, as she walked through the quiet campus garden, a young woman approached her. "Ms. Norwood?" the girl asked gently. Eliza turned. "Please, just Eliza!" The girl hesitated. "Your story. It reminded me of something. When I was 8. I used to draw this symbol over and over. My parents thought it was just imagination. But when I saw it in your video," she pulled a necklace from beneath her sweater, a spiral etched into a wooden charm. Eliza's breath caught. "I don't remember where I got it," the girl whispered, "but I've worn it my whole life." Eliza didn't speak. She simply took the girl's hand, held it tight, and nodded. "You remember more than you think," she said. Months passed. Seasons changed. But the island never left her. Not in dreams, not in thoughts, and not in the way she lived her life. It was no longer a scar, it was a compass. Whenever she felt lost again, Eliza would close her eyes, picture the trees swaying, the chapel's crumbling walls, the wind pressing gently against her cheek, and the voices of those who remembered alongside her. And she'd whisper to herself, "I was never broken. I was just waiting to be found." One morning, Eliza stood at her window and watched the sunlight spill across her kitchen floor. The world was quiet. Not empty, not numb, just calm. She smiled, walked to her desk, picked up her pen, and began writing again. Not a script, not a documentary, but a letter. To herself, to the child who had once been afraid of the dark, to the young woman who thought forgetting would save her, to the woman now who finally knew the truth. Dear Eliza, you were never crazy. You were never weak. You were just too strong to stay silent. You held the story even when it hurt. You came back, even when it terrified you. And now, because of you, others will find the courage to come back. Too. You gave them a map, not to a place, but to themselves. Eliza sealed the letter and placed it in a small wooden box, the same one she found buried near the chapel. Now restored. Inside were symbols, a map, a single photograph. And her name, but now it meant everything. Somewhere in the world, another child would draw that spiral. Another adult would wake up in tears and not know why. Another memory would surface. And when it did, Eliza's story would be there. A light in the fog. A voice in the silence. A whisper from the island that never truly let them go. You're not alone. You were never alone. And now it's your turn to remember. Sometimes, the loudest pain isn't the one we scream, it's the one we forget. And sometimes, the most powerful healing doesn't come from discovering something new, but from remembering what was taken. Eliza's journey reminds us that memory isn't just something stored in the mind, it's woven into our bones, our instincts, our silence. We all carry pieces of ourselves that we've buried out of fear, out of survival, out of necessity. But those pieces never disappear. They wait, and when we are ready, truly ready, they whisper. The lesson isn't that Eliza found the island. It's that the island never stopped holding on to her. And maybe we all have an island like that, a place inside us waiting patiently, quietly, for us to come back, not to relive the pain, but to reclaim the truth. Because healing doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes, healing begins the moment we choose to remember. The end. Up next, 2 more stories that might just change how you see the past. Click to keep walking this path with us, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe some memories deserve to be found.